Oh shit, are we live? Oh man.
We are
Sorry, I was
live.
trying on my new little technical device here. It massages your eyes. It's really nice. Scott, look at
Yeah?
this. Doesn't it like this from the future?
Oh, yeah. That looks like some fancy headgear.
Right. Play some like yeah, look at this. You can even get like there's birds and stuff that will sing to you and yeah, it's really nice. It gets all
Oh,
up in your piece. But anyway, sorry, that's neither here nor there. All right. Well, let's since we have a very interesting topic related to cults, let's start with something that's not controversial, and we'll start with Mr. Johnny Somali. Any chance you've got a chance to hear about him?
Johnny Somali? Nuh-uh.
Yes. So it's a part of this whole YouTube streamers where they go, they call it like in real life streamers, where they go and do obnoxious stuff like out on the streets.
Uh-huh.
You see how they'll just like harass people and such?
Not like street epistemology, but
No, no,
sh-
no. Like example, they might start dancing in the subway or something.
mm-hmm.
But this guy, he came to South Korea and he's done some stuff that's gonna put him in jail, like prison actually, because he
Oh,
was
damn.
playing the North Korean national anthem here, and that's
Mm-hmm.
like against the law.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they call it trying to get clout.
Uh-huh.
You heard of that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So have you seen any of these pranks like gone wrong that people do online?
Yes. All day long. Yeah.
What have you seen?
Oh, man. I'm not good at the names of the folks, but there's, those guys in LA that mess with everybody and get chased down the street, and and there's so many other guys that go in the grocery store and, pass gas or act like they are. They
Uh,
have like this little thing and they squeeze it like, and it makes people mad.
there's this Mexican dude. He goes into the hood and he'll be
That's
like,
yep.
and he'll be like, he'll be throwing some gang signs. The black dudes will come up to him and be like, "What are you talking about? Fool? Where you from, man? East Side Crip, whatever." And then they'll chase him around trying to fight
Yeah,
him.
that's the one I'm talking
I
about.
mean,
Yeah.
the gonads you have to have on you to walk up to people and do that is unbelievable. But actually, they have like their followings online, and they these people encourage it. Like dude, the worst case I have ever seen about this guy is there's this Russian influencer, and this guy sends him $1,000, and he's like beat up your girlfriend and throw her outside, and
Mm,
dude straight. I mean, he like attacked his girlfriend, threw her outside, and this is Russia. This was like in the wintertime. She wound up freezing to death outside, man. And
really?
even when the paramedics came, he was streaming it the whole. He never stopped, man. It's
That's
the stuff
sick.
people do for money and cloud is just ridiculous.
See, I don't do it for the clout. See, I just do it because that's just how I roll. I just
You don't
Rambo
like
shit.
people?
I just Rambo it, man.
Yeah, I helped implode. I voted for Trump. So
All
the
right.
Democrat call. Yeah, Mr. Roth, thank you for your input. We're going to be getting to this. I just thought it's a really, really. I'll just give you some context what happened right now, and then we'll get started. But so Japan kidnapped hundreds of thousands of Korean women and used them as sex slaves in World War II, and then they wind up killing a lot of them, and they wind up killing a lot of them. And Sophia, by the way, just wait for a second, Sophia. We'll get you back on, but yeah, they wind up killing a lot of them and raping a lot of them. I mean, it was horrible. And yeah, see, these influences need to be stopped. Johnny
Mm-hmm.
Somali is one of the worst. Yeah, he has to be one of the worst. Anyway, the point being is that he went up to one of these statues and he poured baby oil all. He took off his shirt and he poured baby oil all on himself. For the P Diddy thing,
Mm.
and then he started dancing on it. And once he did that, he was just annoying people. He was like going into restaurants and spilling his top ramen and stuff. I mean, just some really obnoxious stuff. But once he did that, they started hunting him here in South Korea. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of these people, there was like they started a Johnny, like a Johnny Somali hunt. So he was going live one time, and you see out of like you can see out of your peripheral vision, a guy runs up and kicks his ass, and he goes flying. And so the guy wound up getting arrested, and then they started like a GoFundMe or the equivalent. They got that guy out of jail. They bailed him out and they put him in a 5-star hotel, dude. So,
Wow.
but yeah, it is so offensive that it is a really sensitive issue because Japan still continues to deny it and downplay it. And so, yeah, just so offensive what he was doing.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
when it
another.
comes to it's a good thing he brought up offense, like harm, you hear these words like if you express yourself, you could be harming someone or you could be hurting someone's feelings to the point where you're triggering them or you're causing them, great emotional turmoil, especially if you look Caucasian and you're a male, you know. You ever
Yeah,
heard that whole thing because, the historic um history of privilege of white people dominating the world and dominating, it's so traumatic. So when
mm,
you start talking about, different issues, you can't because people are going to assume you have no right to do that. Who are you, you privileged, you know, being,
elite.
elitist,
Yeah.
Where does free speech come in on that?
All right. Well, our topic today is about cults, and these can get their little cult following online. These, whether it be online personalities or actually, I want to share with you about. I think I sent you a picture. I recently was played a police officer who had to go in and find the dead body of a cult
Mm.
leader. They
Mhm.
mummified her.
Mhm.
So I was like, it was funny. There was me and another guy from Peru, and we had to bust in and break down a bunch of white cult leaders. And right before we went, I was like, man, it's about time we got Latinos busting down some white folks over here, all the
Mhm.
cultists. So
Yeah.
they're called Love is One. And so we actually have a former cult member here. So we're going to talk a little bit to her, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about trying to find out whether or not maybe you might be in a cult, because these particular cult members, they actually stream a lot, like talking about streaming, they stream like every day. And so they do this to attract people, to raise money, and then also to like legitimize what they're doing. So I think these days, when you have Charles Manson or their little cult that they were doing, there was a time in which you didn't have to worry about that because they're like out in the middle of nowhere, on a little ranch. But now you have people who are doing it online. They could reach thousands of people. So I think we need to talk a little bit about that today. So, um, this is whoever this donut glazer, you're freaking hilarious, man. But okay, all right. So we got Sophia coming. Sophia, is your audio fixed? We had some issues.
Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you just
Yes.
fine. All right.
Yeah, I had to use my phone. It just was not working on my freaking laptop.
Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna, Sophia, we would like to talk to you about your story to start off with. And I heard that you're a former cult member.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and yeah, what you learned from that experience?
That's a that's a lot. You got to be more specific. Um well, I was born and raised in Germany and I grew up in foster care cuz my mom passed away when I was 9 and I didn't know my dad cuz he left when I was like 1 years old and went back to the States. So needless to say, he was a soldier in the army, a sergeant to be exact, and he married my mom, and that didn't go well. So anyway, I did want to know who he is, and for the longest time, I thought I was an orphan after my mom died. But then somehow, I guess he found out how to contact me, and we got into contact when I was 16 for the first time. And then when I was 18, I came to live with him. And yeah, I didn't immediately realize that I was in a cult, but it was definitely a cult. So
What was it, a Christian cult
yeah,
or like?
he had like his own version of Christianity, and he was basically the medium between us and God.
So this is your biological father, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so okay, so they one of the things I've heard is that the best cults are the ones that you don't know that you're in. And so you just mentioned what you not immediately realizing, like what were some telltale signs, and then the other part of this is especially if it's with your family, you become to normalize things that you see. Like for example, growing up like poor Latino and stuff, a lot of the behavior I saw like mimicked when I started to get older and repeating this behavior, be it in relationships or friendships. I came to understand, man, some of this stuff was really toxic and like not at all healthy. But if you grow up with it, you're like, oh, this just seems like normal to me. So can
Yeah, especially if you grow up with it, and my siblings on the kids that he had after me with different women that were part of the cult. For them, they were born into it. I wasn't though, and so that's kind of
right,
what made things a little more abnormal for me. But even
right,
me, I was stuck in it for 8 years, so it
okay,
was.
and this is in while you're in the States.
Yes, I was 18 at the time.
Okay, okay. And so, what were
And,
some of the did you experience things like sleep deprivation or anything like that?
yeah. So basically, when I realized something was off, was the first time that I didn't agree with something, and
Oh,
the
please,
amount
please.
of the amount of violence that I got for that is pretty typical, because you have to let the rest of the cult know that you can't do that. So basically, the first time I disagreed, I got knocked into a bookshelf. My clothes were ripped off of me, and I was basically beaten in front of everybody, half naked. And that let
Oh
me
my
know
god.
right then. That let me know to never disagree ever. And then the first telltale sign was that he had three wives, as he called it, but none of the kids were there at that particular time when I joined the cult, because they were actually in the system because they had a open CPS case, but I didn't know that. So when I got there, I'm like, okay, where are all the rest of the kids that you talked about and stuff? And I didn't speak English that well yet, and so they just kind of explained things to me and said that the kids are going to be back soon, but it was based on a lie that one of the kids told at school, and the kids will be
Wow.
back, and the kids did come back. And he explained that the reason he's got more than one wife is because that's actually in the Bible. And he started going into the scriptures where it was okay for certain people who had several wives, like I guess David and other people. And so,
Right.
he was basically saying that that's what God wants, and that's what you're supposed to do as a man.
Y-
And shit like that. Like, this is my first time hearing shit like that. So that's how I knew something was off, but at the same time, I wanted to reunite with my dad and meet him and get to know him. And he was really sweet in the beginning. He was like showering me with gifts and bought me like this gold bracelet, and just like
it's called love
showered
bombing.
me.
Yeah, love
Yes,
Love
bombing.
bombing.
love bomb, the typical
But
thing.
by the way, I wouldn't feel too bad about not being able to speak English properly. Scott is a native speaker and he can barely speak English himself.
True.
So
Very true. Very
the
true.
other side of wow, okay. Scott, do you have any feedback on that? That is
Yeah,
crazy.
it sounds really reminiscent, but it sounds a lot more violent than the organized cults like say JWs, Jehovah Witnesses, or Mormons or something like that. But some of the key features are there. what let me ask you this though, Sophia. Like, how
Hmm.
can someone who is part of a cult, like say Jehovah Witnesses or something more subtle, how could they, even something like in your situation, how could they know or figure out that they're being brainwashed, for example?
Well, what you always going to notice in a cult is that cults kind of develop their own lingo, their own terminology. And for example, we were not to greet each other in the morning by saying good morning. It was Emmanuel, which meant God is with us, according to the
Hmm.
Bible.
Mm,
So when you get up in the morning, you say Emmanuel instead of good morning. And so you'll see things like that, something that sets you apart from what other people do. It's like
mm-hmm.
some eccentric shit going on, like
Ah,
you'll see they have like their own ways of referring to things. And because, we're not worldly like the rest of the world. We're the chosen ones. And so we greet each other like that because God is with us, but God is not with the rest of the people. It's like a
mm-hmm.
us versus them,
Mm.
you know?
So so certain things that set you apart from other people in general.
Yeah, or the buddy system, which I didn't know that's what that was called until after my cult experience. I researched that shit for like the rest of my life after that. But it's
So,
called the buddy system. And you'll see that in a cult. Like you can't move around freely and do your own thing. If you are allowed outside, a cult member has to be with you. And that cult member is going to be a higher ranking person than you. It's going to be like a wife or whatever, because if you get out of
damn.
line, that other cult member is there to keep you in line.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sophia, how many people we're talking about in this cult?
We were 18 people.
18. That was about the size, just so you know, that was about the size of the Love is One cult. They went from like 10 people to 20 people. And actually, they're still around, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so you
Okay.
talk about being this separate or whatever. I have found this is almost universal, that every cult has some weird sexual like obsession where it's
Oh,
like,
shit.
did you experience a bunch of that?
I did, but I really can't talk about those
Yeah,
things
that's fine.
too much.
Yeah,
That's
that's the
just
thing.
because it's because it involves mostly my siblings. Because you remember
Right,
when I
right,
got
right,
to the cult, I was older,
right,
but
right,
my
right,
siblings grew up in that, and
right.
allegedly there were a lot of
But- Okay,
sexual
but
misconduct.
I mean, is it something that they're talking about a lot though? That was more the
It's what the
like
whole thing is about. It's why those cults are formed in the first place.
right.
Mm-hmm.
See, and I think the more that I've thought about this, it kind of makes sense, like in a very perverted way, that that's something that they latch onto because they know that it's something that, first of all, it's very ingrained in us as humans, a desire to reproduce, or even within like the realms of marriage, and that is usually the most sacred relationship there between a husband, or I should say just a spouse. Want to be friendly here, but, I was gonna say between a husband and a wife, but, there's obviously different kinds of marriages, but, the point being is that I think they understand that this is, well, it's a part of, procreation, and then it's something that's kind of like, just it's very controlling over people, So the
Well,
cult. Yeah, good.
if I may add, what I believe the reason is why the whole sexual perversion is always like the main
Right, right,
aspect of it is, for one, you got to understand we're living in a world that is narcissistic, right? What people call the system. Everything is about profit and shit like that. And one of the main things that you can get people strung out on, because people act like sex, hasn't been around since the beginning of time. It's an
right,
easy way to break people down. So
right.
once you once you basically entice people with perversion, not only do they become, hooked on that, you can also blackmail them very well because, nobody wants to know, um, oh, well, I don't want anybody to know that I like kids or, that I like this or
Right.
that. Like, people know that shit is unacceptable. So what happens is the cult leader, he's like, hey, man, I understand, I get it. Like, we're human, and
Mhm. Mhm.
he makes you feel like you could just open up to him and he's going to forgive you for all your sins. And the minute that he get
Wow.
the minute that he gets you to participate, he owns your ass. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
simple.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're a partner of crime and you're help committing all these sexual crimes and there ain't nothing you can do
Damn.
about it.
Damn. That is so interesting you say that. I have never heard that element expressed that way. That makes total sense. But um yeah, so once again it's a very common thing, and I do want to talk about something real quick, which is about Diddy, Puff Daddy, because we don't know whether or not right now, because the way our court system is set up is that people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So we don't really know, as far as the law concerned, he's innocent at this point. So, and that's the way it should be. You know what I mean? As opposed to
Correct.
here North Korea, where you just presume guilty. So it's
Damn, you better not fuck up over there.
I know, right? You're telling me. But anyway, but assume okay, let's take him out of the equation for a second, not even talk about him. But let's just assume that we do know Mr. X, Y, and Z. Um, if we knew that that guy had perpetrated everything that Puff has been accused of, all right? Again, not Puff specifically, but if that is the case, you could definitely say what was going on here was a cult. You have
Mm-hmm.
a leader,
Yep.
him, the person at the top. They're using sex as a means of control. And a lot of stuff what you just said right now, as far as using it as a way to control people. You know?
Yeah, because like that's the main thing in Hollywood. They get you to participate in those parties. They drug your ass up and they film in your ass. And that same first time you took part of that, they
Mm-hmm.
blackmail your ass for however long they want to exploit your ass. As simple as that.
There's a movie on Netflix, or was on Netflix, about Scientology. They did the
Hmm.
same thing.
Hmm.
They would get you to do stuff or confess to stuff, and they were recording it. So if you ever decided to leave
Right.
or something like that, they'd pull that out and be like, "Uh huh, we got you."
And it doesn't
And
see people think that shit like that only happens in Hollywood or with rich people, but there are small little cults like right down
mm-hmm,
the street from you, and you wouldn't even know.
Hey, I
mm-hmm,
have to tell you about this. I was actually involved with a cult for over a year here in South Korea, and I didn't realize it till about a year and a half. Oh God, when I think about this sends chills down my spine just to think about this, man. Oh God, I because they did the initial love bombing to me. Okay, and again, I
Hmm.
because I just thought these people are Christians. I didn't realize what was going on. But this pastor, like, he did a lot of the like he would go up there and speak for like 3 hours sometimes, and people would be falling asleep and stuff. But
And you're of the devil when you fall asleep. That's what we was told. If
oh,
we
you're of the
fall
devil.
asleep, if we fall asleep, it's because the devil's putting you to sleep.
Oh yeah, don't fall. Actually, I went on to someone else's podcast recently and I actually put one of the guests to sleep, so that was pretty embarrassing. I don't
he
think
was
they're very.
asleep. He was
Yeah, I
asleep.
wasn't. They weren't very impressed. But you could just see him like sleeping off in this. Luckily, it wasn't RHE. I would never do that on RHE. But anyway, that's besides the point. Anyway, the point I want to get to is that you would be hanging out with some of these people sometimes, and you would just see them. Their eyes would glaze off. You would see them, and they'd be like, and they're like, wake up, like,
What?
yeah, like they would like fall asleep for like 2 seconds, and then they'd be like, and then you just see their eyes just drifting away somewhere
Damn.
because they were doing like sleep deprivation on these people, right?
Hmm.
I knew that they were
Hmm.
working a lot. I didn't know what extent because I want to tell you this. I used to do these camps with them, and then we would go to sleep. They would keep us up to like 12 o'clock, and then wake us up at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's bad enough in and of itself. I didn't realize that the other Korean people, they were keeping them up to hours past this. So one time,
Yep.
I did a podcast with RHE, with Darrington, who's a former Mormon, and just because of the time, we did it like at 2 o'clock in the morning. And as I'm doing this podcast, I see them working. And the crazy thing is, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, you should be like pretty tired, you know. They were walking around and talking like they were like ants, man. They were all busy doing stuff. And I'm like, holy shit, because I'm exhausted myself from this small amount of sleep. And they're keeping these people up for hours afterwards.
Mm.
Man, it was
Yeah, and that's one of the main tools is hunger and sleep. And even to this day, I cannot sleep more than 4 to 5 hours because of it.
Ooh,
And
ugh,
it's
man.
really terrible because I need more sleep a lot of times, but I wake up like clockwork, 5 hours or less, and I cannot sleep again
Right.
until I'm completely fucking exhausted, like almost to the point where you have to knock me the fuck out. Like seriously.
Well, yeah, and,
uh,
and and one of the tools they use is to keep you really, really busy all the time,
busy,
to
busy.
keep you
Yeah,
from.
work makes free, right?
Yeah, and the devil loves,
and
Idle
lazy
hands,
and
people,
idle hands.
idle hands or whatever. Yes, tell us
The
that
devil's
and
before.
playground.
idle hands, yeah, idle hands are the devil's workshop. And all the revenue that you get from your work, you're bringing it straight to the cult, and that's
Right.
according to Acts. In Acts,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you try to keep anything for yourself, you're trying to deceive the Holy Spirit. And you don't get shit for your labor. I mean, we couldn't get into the fridge, the freezers. There were locks on everything. we only
Wow.
ate we only ate when we were allowed to eat. And sometimes we didn't eat almost 24 hours and we'd be starving. But that's just how
Wow.
it was. Whenever they felt like we could eat. And sometimes we ate
Wow.
regularly and on time, and then sometimes we just fucking didn't. You just would never know.
Hey,
Mm.
let's try to watch the f bombs, please. I don't mind a little here and now, but let's
Oh,
not.
sorry,
No, no,
I have a
no,
foul
it's
mouth.
okay. No, I can imagine if you grew up under that, like maybe your filters can be a little bit off sometimes. No, no,
Well, then what the hell happened to Scott?
Yeah, he's
I know,
probably
right?
called. I'm still
So,
in the cult.
Sophia, Sophia, so there's quite a bit of a chat going on here concerning the LGBT,
Oh God.
LBGT rights, and so I do want to bring this up because like I'm someone who believes in all people should have rights and dignity and respect, um,
Yeah.
but on the same time,
All people though. Like,
well, I mean,
what if it's a pedophile or a
okay, or
murderer?
a
Like
killer,
all people.
obviously, if we're talking about people who are out killing people, or that's. But I mean, like I believe people should have freedom, and I may personally be against. Whatever LGBT behavior, but that doesn't mean that I hate the people. That they should have to follow what I believe. That's what cults do. You have to follow what I believe in. So if I said, "Hey, you shouldn't be allowed to transition, or you shouldn't be allowed to marry who you love," that's just cultish thinking right there. Because you shouldn't be forced to go along with what I believe in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. I don't care what nobody does unless you're infringing upon somebody else's rights, or
Right,
unless you're taking advantage of an innocent, um, which a lot of times are children, right? And
right, right.
if it's two consenting adults, I don't care what y'all do.
Right.
Mhm.
So we do have a trans person in the chat, a friend of mine named Marshall, and hello. Oh, I'm sorry, Marcel. No,
You messing it up,
Marsha,
man.
Marsha.
That ain't
That's
your
the new name.
friend.
I know. Okay, I caught myself.
Marsha.
Marsha. That's the new name, the alive name. Okay, but anyway, um, have you seen have you seen from the side, which is like the Morena,
Marina,
Marina,
Marina.
just call me Marina. I thought it was Marsha, like Marsha Clark. There was a person who was going after OJ, Marsha Clark. But anyway, have you seen? Have you seen much of that coming from the progressive wing? Because Scott sent me a video yesterday about Portland State where they just had this sign. Oh, Scott, you take it away. You explain this.
Yeah, so I've been getting into trying to get back into like political discussions and things like that. Just it just kind of captured my attention with the whole election, the lead up into the election, and so me and Sophia, we used to have a we were real active on the channel, the discussion, and we used to talk about all these issues. But so I went back to revisit some of that stuff, and one of the people that I don't know if we ever brought him on our show, but there's this guy who does street epistemology, and his name is Peter Boghossian, and he's a professor and a gender scholar, and he does street epistemology. So what he does is he goes around and he plays sort of like games to kind of figure out why do you believe what you believe. I mean, that's where the root word of epistemology is from. It's like a Greek word that's how it's like theory of knowledge. So what he does is he exercises that in public, and just it could be anything like religion, politics, whatever the case is, and he'll
Right.
just ask questions like, how did you arrive at that? And then one answer, of course, leads to a deeper question that got you to that answer. And so people take it either two ways. Either people are going to get pissed off because they feel like you're challenging them, or they're going to feel like, oh, this is cool. I get to really discover and have a chance to really kind of vocalize what it is I believe in. So, anyways, he goes to these college campuses, and the video was in Portland where he's on college campus, and he's just playing the game. He's getting people to fall in with the game. People like it. He's talking to people, and then the staff, some of the staff people see what's going on, and they harass the heck out of him. And we have the video. We can look at it. I don't know if you want me to go be a spoiler or want to look at the video little key
Yeah,
parts, but
we could bring it on right now. I'll add it and I'll add it to, actually it's the wrong one though. I got to go and find the one that I want to add
okay.
cuz that's the second one. But okay, actually, but what you just said right now about epistemology and asking questions like with the Socratic method,
Mhm.
I think that's one of the best ways that to kind of avoid and question cult leaders because they want to say you have to accept this because I'm getting it from God. I'm.
Mhm.
I think Sophia, you were mentioning that like he was
Yeah,
supposed to be some kind of mediator, and so
correct.
right. So if you're able to ask these questions, ask questions like, okay, why exactly is it the case that you're the only one God's talking to? Or why is it the case that you're getting some preferential treatment? Because specifically with
Well,
this, hold
in
on,
my dad's,
hold on, let me
sorry.
finish, please. With this Love Has Won cult, this lady was being extremely abusive to these people. She was getting really drunk on camera and you could hear her abusing people. And so it's like, why is it that you are able to be abusive? You're telling everyone else not to take any drugs, but you yourself are drinking yourself into a stupor every night. Why is it, you know what I mean? Just asking questions like that. But please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like in my dad's case, it was because he was a prophet and he was chosen to be the leader. And so in his case, he supposedly had a vision where Christ hovered over him and told him everything to do that he's doing now. So if he hadn't got that vision, then he would not be doing this. So obviously, he was chosen to do this because Christ chose to give him the message, right? And that's how that was. And, my dad also struggled with alcoholism and things,
Right,
but
addiction.
we didn't know. You see what I'm saying? That was kept a secret. So a lot of times they are just hypocrites.
Right, right. Hypocrisy.
And that's a
Yeah.
good statement there by Scott Bailey. Matter of fact, what's up, Scott? That's my bandmate from Electrosonics. But he says all of us are cult members. We have to believe to live in this world, whatever that might be. Humans are programmable. I thought more, I guess you could,
Ab.
I thought more
What is
about
ab?
abs. I don't know.
I
Come on, Scott, finish.
got. I
Well,
got.
I kind of agree with what he's saying for the most part, because most people are programmable and most people do not live in their authentic self and don't think for themselves. So the majority, I would say, yes, it's a cult, but I do believe that there are people who are genuine sovereign beings who think for themselves, and those are the ones that we see get assassinated, shot, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, they're challenging that, and so
Yeah,
there's a whole list of those people. And
Malcolm X. Yeah, list
yeah.
goes on. Yeah.
Actually, there's this guy who I told you about, Scott. I he was actually he's half Korean, but he got adopted to an American family, and he started running amok when he turned an adult, and they straight deported his ass. He got sent back to Korea, and you know what I mean. He's like half black. He looks kind of like you, like mixed. You know what I mean? He's mixed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the thing is that yeah, he had to come here. And, he found out he had a Korean name and just had to start from square one. But he spent a lot of time in prison, and he has like a lot of street knowledge that I was telling Scott about this guy,
Mm-hmm.
and because he spent like 5 years in prison and just had nothing to do but to read, so he's not formally educated, but he has like a lot of street knowledge. And when I was talking to him, he told me something that, oh man, it's very mind opening. He told me that he said 90% of people that you pass on the streets, if you were to ask them, are you indoctrinated? They would all tell you no, right? But the
Right.
reality is that most people are indoctrinated, whether it be from your country or from your church. And
Yeah.
Scott, what do you think about that?
I think that's totally true, man, because I have to watch myself. That's why I operate the way I do. Like I always consider myself an agnostic on most things. Like
Hmm.
probably the most, the only thing I really know is I'm experiencing crap, um, as an experiencing observer. But after that, everything is just inference. We could be a brain in the vat. I mean, it goes deep. But at the same time, my reality is what I experience. That's the only thing I can call really real. It's kind of like the mystical argument, like what we experience is the only really thing that we can
Right.
actually call real. Outside of that, everything is just overthinking and, kind of like, suffering. It's just you're ruminating, you're stuck in your illusion and you're taking it too serious. And so for that reason, in order to find peace in my life, I just admit, you know what, I can be wrong. And if I can be wrong, and I am wrong about probably 99.9% of everything that I observe, then so is everybody else. And
That's
so
just no,
yeah, and that
Scott.
keeps
Most
you
people are wrong about 90%. You're wrong a lot more than most
a lot
people.
more. I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure I'm really wrong because
Whatever.
But look,
I was
you know
wrong
what?
about you, for example. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
So this guy say you do whatever the government tells you or you go to prison. You're and my definition of liberty must vary a bit. I mean, in a way, he has a point, because
Hmm.
you have to follow the law or your ass going to. I mean, sorry, your buttocks is going to jail.
your
That's right.
anus is the technical term.
Yeah. Hell, no, that sounds worse.
Your buttocks. So, so I do want to get to Scott a little bit, because Scott was in the JW group, but then he was also in. So Scott, if you could tell us a little bit about the JW group and what helped you to get out of there. but then also, oh hi, purples. We got two trans people in the audience now. So, um, purple is a, but purple's a reasonable. Purple's a very
Trans rules, man. What are you talking about?
I have trans friends. I don't have
yeah,
anything
Yeah,
against.
I love trans
I
people.
have my issues with the some of parts of the
right,
trans movement and
right.
certain activists, but
Right, and this is why I'm asking Scott right now to get in on this, Scott, because from leaving the L, I'm not leaving
JWs.
the JWs, all those acronyms, the L's and the J's and the W's. I mean, there's so many things. You went the JWs to the cult of atheism, and you've also got a chance to experience the cultist side of the LGBT plus community. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your experience leaving the JWs, and if you've seen any parallels between them and the other alphabet.
Yeah, it's not only with the alphabet folks, but it's also with a lot of other systems we have in this entire system. Like this whole system operates kind of like a well-designed matrix of a sort. It's like everybody's sort of programmed. Our brains are very programmable. I took Sales 101 seminars and got my real estate license and went into selling all kinds of stuff. So I saw the parallels. I saw the parallels between selling and how to manipulate people on that level and compared it to my experience with JWs. And it's all the same. You're appealing to emotion, you're getting people on a yes train, yes, 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 yes.
Yes, Trey.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you get people to agree with one thing, you can get them to agree to a Bible study eventually, and then you might even convert them and get them baptized. And but there's a lot of key features with the LGBTQ activism, I would say, is that you can't believe outside of the box or your echo chamber. If you do, you risk being out of the tribe and punished for it in so many ways. And it's the same thing with religion, with cults, with all of that stuff. It's kind of like Scott said, our whole system is kind of like a cult in some
I
ways.
thought you're
Like,
Scott. I thought you were Scott.
yeah, there's another
Are
Scott.
you
His name
referring
is,
yourself in the third person?
no, there's a
That sounds
Scott
kind of
Bailey.
cultish.
Yeah, it is. It's part of my belief is I'm more than one person. I'm
Yeah,
kind of like a Trinity.
Isaiah doesn't believe that Scott is not a cult member anymore.
That's true.
get out of here, Isaiah.
Isaiah,
Yeah, you know what? You and him are in a cult because y'all both some eggheads.
That's right. That's part of it. You got to shave your head sometimes.
ouch, ouch. Okay, that's
So, do I have to shave my head to be on the show now?
That's right.
let's keep this civil. Let's keep this civil, Scott. Uh, no,
He
but
started it and saying
yeah,
keep it civil.
I know. Um, so so the thing is that so Scott, okay. So what was the response with the JWs for asking questions? Because I do want to tell you this one because like growing up, I'm not going to say that um I was like in a cult. I mean, it's ultra charismatic. So they believe like a lot of young earth creationism and that a lot of stuff, even within the realms of Christianity, people might think Christianity's out there. We're kind of like on the fringe of Christianity because they believe some pretty out there stuff. I mean, I must say.
Mm,
But one of the things that like let's see, I don't believe this was a cult, but it's just like it's going in that direction. It's like if you don't check this, it can get that way. But the point is that my whenever I would ask questions, for example, I would start to evaluate how God was able to punish um, Adam and Eve. This is, as I'm like maybe like 14, 15 years old, when I would ask these questions to my parents, they would get really angry with me to the point it was like kind of like if I didn't clean my room or something like didn't like you know what I mean, just was being disrespectful to them. But like I'm someone who wanted to ask questions.
mm-hmm.
So that was not like it was just seeing like I was defying God or defying them. So um it's one of those things that made me like kind of just say, "Fuck this, man! I don't want any part of this anymore," and just went really off the deep end. But Scott, can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, so with
Fire
JWs,
some question.
I would ask questions, and it'd always be met with some sort of scorn or judgment. Like I should be ashamed to ask such dumb questions or challenging
Oh,
like it's a
shame! Wow,
yeah, it's like it's a you're gonna hurt God's feelings or you're gonna make Jesus sad. And they used to tell me,
wow.
Jesus cries for you every day, but eventually those tears are gonna turn from tears of sadness into tears of anger when he burns your butt in hell.
Oh my
Stuff like
God.
that. But they didn't really believe in hell, but they did believe in like God burning you, like destroying you at the end of the world, which was any day now is what they'd keep telling you. Like
Any
God is
day now.
sad. Yeah, any day now. And there you go asking those questions. And how dare you when tomorrow he's going to show up, and then what you going to say? You going to dare ask God those questions? I bet you're going to try to hide it then. So you better start hiding it now. And it's like I always thought to myself, how would I hide anything from God anyways? Like
Right,
God knows if I'm faking it. Doesn't God know I'm faking it? It
right.
like it's so childish, after a while. It just gets really stupid.
So
And
okay, Scott, hold on, Scott. You said childish. Okay, this is really good. So I think okay, so part of the cult things I'm seeing this is that they're treating you like a child. If you're saying you're ashamed to ask questions, they have this expression that there's no such thing as a stupid question. But
mm,
that's not at all true because we know there are very stupid questions you could be asking that shows
mhm.
that like you're not critically thinking. Like for example, when I tell people I live in Korea,
I may interject here.
Yes. Yep, go ahead.
I think there are no stupid questions because I mean sometimes people just don't know stuff. You know what I mean? Even if it seems dumb to you because you know.
okay,
So
touche,
like I'm
touche.
just saying that's a little judgmental.
Well,
Yeah.
when I tell people I live in Korea, a lot of times they'll say north or south. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure if I lived in North Korea, you wouldn't be talking to me right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
North Korea doesn't exactly allow people to go. You know what I mean? Anyway,
Question
that would be an
authority.
example of a stupid question, but I accept what you just said right now. Anyway, the point being is that if people are asking questions, and what he just said right now, that like you're ashamed to ask questions, that's like maybe a question a child would answer. Like example, asking, maybe how Santa is able to fly his reindeers. By the way, I'm gonna be playing Santa this Christmas, so I got the stomach already for it. So, um, yeah, I will be playing Santa Claus. They actually call him Santa Harabuji here, which is
Scaring the kids again.
Santa.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have this classic picture. It's funny you say. I'm gonna show you real quick of me dressed up as Santa Claus and my daughter. I mean, you would have thought I was like a tiger or something. I got to show you this picture now that I mentioned it. Because even after I took off the beard and everything, she, she was frightened of it. But anyway, the point being is that a kids obviously they can ask some very stupid questions. So if you're being treated like that, it could be embarrassing, and then there's all the more desire to go to the religion or the cult leader because one of the things I've heard, and I think it's so accurate, which atheists say about religion in general, not just Christianity, but is that if you already think you have all the answers, there's no real need to go out and search. You know what I mean? There's
Mm-hmm.
no real so if you don't have that, like you're not going to question, you're not going to think critically. And so I've seen that very much the lack of critical thinking um, uh, inside of religion. So having people like Peter Boghossian just out there teaching people how to ask questions
Mm.
because people got angry at him and he wasn't really even making any points. He was only asking questions and people got upset that he was asking some certain questions. So I think you got to be able to do that, be it your if it's your parents or your religion, your school, your own government too. because I
Well,
think
see,
someone is talking. Hold on, real quick. I'll let you get in, but someone was talking about the government. They teach you to think in a certain way, and you can't question like if your government doesn't make mistakes. But we know that the government does make mistakes. We knew they do a lot of immoral shit. Scott,
well, it's called gaslighting. So what they
right,
do, what my cult, the cult I was a part of, did, is they would attribute some sort of negative quality on you for asking questions or studying certain things or whatever. Like if you ask, they'll be like, "Well, why would you even ask that question? That reveals so much about you right there." The fact that you would ask, "How can we prove God?" or "How can we prove this or prove that?" tells me right now that you hate God and you hate this and you do this and that.
But
And
see,
it's
y'all
kind
are
of this,
making it y'all making it way too complicated.
can you see that? Hold on,
yeah,
can
Oh
you see that by
wow,
the way,
look at that.
look
Scott?
at that.
Hold on. What do you
but
mean complicated? Can you hold on?
mhm,
Can you explain?
Yeah, like it's very simple. You don't want people to ask questions when you don't want to be challenged, when you don't want your
right.
authority to be challenged, and that's it. That's all. Like,
That's all it
come
really
on now.
is. That's the point. I'm
I
just saying
mean,
that's what they want to say as a tactic to keep you from asking the questions. So, like,
and
I've
that's a
spoken.
tactic of cult leaders or cults, and that's why we know that a lot of things are cults. And a lot of people are going to get mad and say, oh well, how is it a cult, and when it's just an ideology, and this because of the response
Right,
when I don't agree. Like, even if my question is stupid, why would you get so angry? Why would it
Yeah,
make you so angry?
right.
you know
yeah. It's like
Look at this comment.
the government is the biggest cult.
Man, who is this donut glazer? I really appreciate
He
your
don't like the government. He's maybe he gives me anarchy vibes. Are you
Yeah,
an
he's.
anarchist? Donut glazer?
Don't ask that question.
okay. Speaking of which, I want to transition to one thing real quick. Pardon the pun, because there's a lot of it's like this thing has been taken over in the comment section by trans people, but I do want to talk a bit. Um, because what you're talking about right now, Sophia, that like maybe people don't fall into traditional cults, as in like you're living communally and basically just having, okay, he's a libertarian or
Mm,
they're a libertarian, whatever. This individual is a libertarian because I don't want to misgender them. We don't know what they are.
yeah,
But let's say you have like BLM or Antifa. They don't exactly, well, they do have some leaders, but it's not like they're living communally and, basically,
they're not organized.
well, they are organized, but it's not, they are organized, but it's not like a Jim Jones cult, you know what I mean, where they're like all together. So, but still though, it's a thinking regime. You're thinking in a certain way and you're not allowed to think outside of that box. So,
Hmm.
Yeah,
what I,
it could still be a mental cult, even if it's not a physical cult.
right, okay, so mental, okay, I like that. You said mental cult. And so right now what I've seen though with Trump, because I am a Christian myself, but one of the things that's been so disturbing for me when I've seen Trump is that he flat out says, "Look, I could go out and kill someone in the middle in front of everyone, and people are still going to follow me." Oh, that is scary. That is
Did he
scary.
actually say that?
He actually said that. He actually
Hold
said,
on now, because I want to know if he actually said that. Because
I
somebody
agree.
made somebody made the claim that he said that once he's elected, if people vote for him, we will never have to vote again, which would suggest that he's some kind of Marxist or tyrant. But then when I looked into that, that was actually misrepresented, and they left out of that statement that he said, when you vote for me, you won't have to vote again for 4 years. But they conveniently left the 4 years out. So I don't know. Like, I can't really just go by what's being said. I want to see proof that he actually said that before I
It's
would ever voice my opinion on that.
Okay,
it's like
hold on.
this.
I'll show you the clip right now. But Scott, you want to say
Yeah, I was
something?
just gonna say the same thing happened when they claimed that Trump was saying that Nazis are good people,
Right.
and there's good people on both sides of white supremacy. That was a lie too, because he was saying that I'm not talking about the Nazis and the white
Right.
supremacists. I'm
Right.
saying the people that are out there protesting. There's good people on both sides of that statue removing issue. So he was just trying to take
Right.
it out of the personal and into the rights that people have to protest or march or whatever. But the news just pretty much ran that soundbite into the ground.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, and I told you, I said very specifically with him. They try to say that he threatened to kill Liz Cheney, but he was just saying that if people had to go and fight the wars themselves, they would be a lot less inclined to do that. So it
Yeah.
was very honest that the way that they said that. But this is out of the horse's mouth. Right here. So look at this.
The people, my people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot
I don't hear
somebody and I
nothing.
wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
Scott, could you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay, so
I
he
don't
says,
hear
yeah.
nothing.
Well, he says I could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose any voters. Anyway, let's get on past that point though, because the point is that when someone is saying I could do whatever I want and I'm not going to lose any support, I mean, this is as close to being as cult leader out in the open saying I could do whatever I want and people are still going to follow me. I mean, that's disturbing.
Yeah, it sounds that way. It's definitely the kind of rhetoric you would hear from a cult leader or somebody who wanted to really control. And I mean, let's face it, MAGA is a cult.
Hmm.
There's a lot of
I don't
people
know
following.
though. Like a cult
But
leader wouldn't
Sophia,
say
Sophia,
that.
Sophia, hold on. So Sophia, please, you have to let people finish. Scott.
Yeah, like the only reason I say that is not that I don't know whether Trump is trying to make a cult. I don't know, but there's a lot of people. They wear his hat, they wear his shirt, they just kind of like they're just riding his jock all day. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things where they it's like Trump, the Bible, and guns. It's like some people, but there's some people who voted for Trump. I'd say most voting Americans voted for Trump, and
Hmm.
they aren't part of a cult. They don't see Trump as a cult leader. They see Trump as just a guy with better ideas. He was a better candidate than Harris, and that's really all there is to it. And for me, I would agree. I think that there's some thing I didn't vote, to be quite honest with you. I don't. I didn't want to vote for Trump, and I didn't want to vote for Harris. I couldn't. I
Right,
just couldn't bring myself to do it. I have my
right,
own reasons, but overall, I mean, if you look at just the practicality, I'm a practical kind of person. It's like if you want to clean up the border, you want to clean up this and that. Probably Trump sounded at least, or was perceived by most Americans as the most qualified person for that job. I mean, he was the one that kept talking about it and kept making it a big deal. And then He's already moving his people in place to get that done. Like the gutting out the government. Getting rid of education department, getting rid of a lot of government waste. I mean, these are bipartisan issues. Immigration is a bipartisan issue. Controlling the border isn't a
right,
Republican thing. It's
right,
everybody
right,
wants the border under control. That's
right.
why he won, because he was on message. He resonated with the voter. It wasn't because he's a cult leader and everybody's
Right.
following a cult leader. That's
So,
where a lot of Democrats and a lot of people are kind of messing up, because they're not understanding why the Democrats lost the election. They just think that, it boils down to everybody's just bigots. I don't think that's
so,
the
Sophia,
case.
Sophia, so I want to ask you a question. You said that you didn't think that MAGA was a cult. So can you tell me why? And then two, can you also tell me what, if any, parallels you've seen inside of the LGBT activists? Because I always want to separate when I'm talking about trans activists. I want to separate that from the actual trans people. Okay, because to make that equation that they're one and the same is not at all true. There's plenty of trans people who don't believe in the extreme gender ideology. And then there's a lot of straight or cis people who are, maybe sometimes those people are some of the worst ones, who push out agenda so hard. Um, Maybe they feel that they're standing up for their friends, which I totally understand and totally respect. But the manner in which they go about it is very, like, it's very toxic. And in my opinion, it seems like they do more harm in the long run because they turn off a lot of moderate people, like myself, who might be otherwise sympathetic. So once again, starting off with Trump, if Trump is the cult there, um, the MAGA, and then do you see any parallels between the LGBT? Uh,
Okay, so starting off with MAGA, whatever, being a cult, I don't think so. Because, like, one thing about Trump, he's very genuine and he'll say whatever comes to his mind. And that's one thing I like about him, even though sometimes he says really stupid stuff. And so the problem with it is he can be kind of ignorant and dumb on some things, and he'll just still continue to say stuff like he actually thinks that what he said is smart, and he comes off like he's a little bit uneducated at times to me. But I don't think that he's some kind of cult leader, because a cult leader would, first of all, wouldn't get up there and say, "Oh yeah, I could kill somebody and I wouldn't lose support." A narcissist would say that, or some kind of, like,
Yeah.
excuse my language, but an asshole, an arrogant ass asshole. And Trump can be kind of arrogant, but for the most part, I think he's just an old school patriot. And I think that he wants the country to be more independent, so we don't, end up in death and beholden to China. And I think he has overall good ideas, but he can be, again, kind of ignorant, and but I prefer somebody that may be a little bit ignorant at times, but at least I know what I'm dealing with. I look at him, I see him talk, and I know what I'm dealing with. I'm not confused,
With
because
who he is. Yeah.
he doesn't hide who he is, and so what I want to say is the media has a lot to do with how people see certain things. If you're going to constantly show the crazy lunatic Republicans on the media, then yeah, you're making it look like it's some kind of cult. But I mean, I live in Texas in a small town, and we had a lot of Kamala Harris signs all over the place. I do deliveries and I see people's backyards and stuff every day. And to my surprise, in a Republican state, we had a lot of people that voted for Kamala Harris. And, the people that do vote for Trump, you'll see Trump signs in their yards, but you don't see crazy people running around like the stuff they're showing on the news. You see what they want you to show and what they want to replay. Because on the other hand, I could say leftism is a complete mental illness, because they show things like, yesterday I watched a court case where a girl killed her own freaking dad because he voted for
right.
Trump, and she killed him and stabbed him to death with an ice pick, and said it needed to be done because he voted for Trump. So on the other hand, like, they're just as insane, but we all know that the majority of people is not running around out here murdering somebody because they voted for Trump. But if we let the media tell us, that's what all the leftists are doing right now. So they're all crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
are we going to let them tell us how to think? Or are we going to look at the real world and the real scenarios that we're experiencing, where you are? Is that happening right there where you are? Are you seeing this when you open your door and go outside? Would you even know about any of this crap if you wasn't on social media? Let's be real with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I got to say with that. Oh, and one more
Manufactured.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing. A cult leader is not going to sit there and say, "Oh, I can do whatever I want and God will justify it." No, a cult leader is going to want to be seen as an angel, and he's going to come to you like an angel of light. He's going to make it seem like he's innocent. That's what a cult leader is going to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So okay, so and what are your thoughts about the if you see the extreme activist? Like, let's just say, for example, like
Well,
child
there's two sides
intersex.
to the whole. There's two sides to this, or maybe even three sides. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things is has to do with big pharma that likes to exploit people for profit. So a lot of people are really being medically exploited and fast tracked down that path of getting transition. And then the detransitioners are being ostracized, called out,
Mhm.
and that's what makes it come off like a cult because a person should be allowed to say, hey, I thought this was the right thing, but my doctors pretty much told me there was no other way. I felt pressured into doing this. They were saying that if I don't do this, it could cost me my life. And then they fast tracked me down that road. And then I did it, but they didn't tell me any warnings. They didn't tell me that it could be bad. They didn't tell me any of that. And now I regret what I did. And then a lot of times they are punished for that and openly and publicly, um, you know, embarrassed and shamed. And that's cult like behavior. That should not happen. So the activists who are pushing this agenda that that's the only way, and gearing it towards children, they will be the ones who come after the people who regret the decision and then come out
Right.
about it and say, hey, this may not be the only way. Like, because I
Yeah.
care about you because this happened to me and I don't want this to happen to the next person. But they're
Right.
not allowed to do that.
So very specifically, when people decide to leave a cult, um, there's something called like a shunning, right?
Yes.
Where they don't talk to them, or they'll abuse them in whatever way. And so I would like to hear from the two trans people right now, who are in the talk. Why is there such an abusive stance towards detransitioners? Because I would think, okay, so and I may be wrong, but if I were a trans person, you would want people to be well aware of everything that's going to happen because of, or some of the potential things that could happen. Because if if people are aware, then maybe people won't go into this as blindly as I think a lot of younger people are, and then that will make your side look really bad whenever you see people who are detransitioning. So is that what it is? Like, you don't want people to see the bad side of this, or you don't want people to not go down it in the first place? I'm just genuinely curious because I try to think, if I was in that side, I would want the consequences to be very well known from the top. So can you give it, Scott? If you could, can you ask me why you think? Because I'm sure you've experienced some shunning. So as from a JW, have you experienced any of that from the atheist side as well? Like by
Yes,
expressing disagreeing opinions? And by the
of
way,
course.
please, the trans people please let me know if you have any thoughts on that. But Scott, please.
Yeah, sure, man. What they do is just like everybody does in these group thinks, man. They gaslight you. So if you ask certain questions that challenge them, they get upset because they can't really answer the question, or maybe they don't know the evidence that they supposedly have, or there is no evidence for what they're claiming. And so instead of actually admitting that and saying, you know what, you got a good point, I need to go back and research that, what they'll do is they'll say, well, you've got an agenda. There's a reason why you're questioning. It's like if you're like a religious person might ask an atheist, um, the reason you're questioning the Bible or God's existence or something like that is because you're being misled by the devil, or you're just blinded by evil, and it's in your heart. Atheists will do kind of the same thing. If you start kind of questioning them, they'll kind of do the same thing. I mean, they won't use the whole God thing against you, of course, but they'll just say that you don't you're Dunning Kruger, or you think you know it all and you don't, or you know um it just I've experienced it all, man. That's why I've just come to kind of see that people are all the same. they all operate on the same, and until people can really disconnect from their beliefs and kind of find some sort of
Disconnect.
psychological or spiritual ground for themselves to where they're confident just in the fact that I'm a human being, I'm I have my nature as a conscious being I experience, and you can be at peace and be happy, then you won't really have a need to do this kind of stuff to people. But people are so ego driven, their ego is just so
Ego
fragile.
driven.
Yeah, it's like I identify with my religion or my book or my
Hmm.
politics or whatever it is. Like when you attack my religion, you're attacking me. And it may not even be an attack, it might just be a question. Like, or atheists the same way, Um, but I had a religious experience and it was ineffable. And for me, I'm a believer in whatever it is I believe in, right? An atheist will say, "Oh, that's logically fallacious. You cannot believe in God because you had an experience of God. You just had an experience. Maybe you were just took too many drugs, or you were just having a weird moment." And they just dismiss you right out of hand,
Yeah.
just like the religious people do of the atheists. They just dismiss them right out of hand because
Right.
everybody knows what they want to believe.
somebody said, sorry,
Go
Good.
right ahead.
Somebody said what?
somebody said
Scott.
in the comments that the detransitioners, the number of those is artificially inflated. But I would like to know, how do you know that?
Yeah,
How
and
do
the
you
other
know
part.
that?
Good. Sorry.
Because to me, that's kind of a dismissive statement, because that's like saying you're dismissing the claims of hundreds of people who have transitioned.
So okay, so this person is
I
saying
mean, detransitioned.
yeah, detransitioner are 4%. That's actually not answering my question though, because my question is whatever it is, why is it that those people are ostracized and mocked and trying to shout down? These people get shouted down, and that's my issue specifically is that when people get shouted down, you don't allow them to listen to you, or you don't take time to listen to them because here's my thing too. Okay, because I'm a Christian and I had a religious conversion, and the people who are on this side, they will dismiss what I've experienced, my personal experience, very quickly. But on the same side of that coin, they want me to say that, well, I don't know this trans person's real lived experience. And that's absolutely true, which is why I do not go around trying to disprove trans people's identity. It's not something I'm not going to
Hmm.
debate a person because I don't know what they've experienced. And I try to be very clear on that. And regardless of what you have experienced, I want to love you. And, if I can help you out in any way or people are abusing you, I want to help you and stand up for you. But I don't have to necessarily agree with everything that you're saying. These things aren't mutually exclusive. I don't have to agree with this side to say that, hey, I don't really know. The reality is, I don't know what exactly is you're experiencing. And if I could experience that, maybe I might 100% be down with you with
Well,
exactly what you're saying. Hold on, but because of that, what this side I see, they're so quick to want to dismiss other people's personal experiences. So I find that contradictory. But Scott,
yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that would like to love you and abuse you at the same time. You know, so you're good company. But anyways,
Well,
uh,
I mean, first of all, like, the percentage of how many people it is doesn't really matter, because
right,
the
right,
point is that
it's
there are
principle.
detransitioners, and the point is, like you said, why can't they come out and share their experience without being mocked, ridiculed? Things are being said like, "Oh, you were never trans to begin with, then," and like, that's not cool. So if you know if you demand a certain kind of respect for yourself, then people should be able to give that to others as well.
Yep.
hold up. But you also understand these people who are atheists. They also say that whenever I say I was a former atheist, they'll say, "Oh, well, you were never really an atheist." Like as if they know
Right.
who
Like,
I was. Like if they could read my mind.
I was a
Christians say
Christian,
that
and
too.
they will tell me that. Oh, you were never a Christian then?
Right.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, I was. Actually, I was very devout.
Yep.
And you are something more of a mystic right now, correct?
Yeah, if I had to label myself, because I just believe in the experience of being human, and whatever you think God means to you based on your experience, because can't nobody on this planet, nobody, prove otherwise. Period.
Right.
End of story.
Right.
By the way,
Absolutely.
Purple, I say Purple is one of the more reasonable ones, but she says the LGBT community at large still welcomes them if they want to hang out with us. That's cool. Like I could be down with people, if you accept that, hey, this is something that happened, and maybe
Yeah, well, but I've also been in the community, and I've seen other things too. So
right,
let's not sugarcoat it.
right. I know. I'm saying I'm just making. I agree
No,
100% with
I
that.
was responding to the person popping up right there.
Right, but I that's why I
Sorry.
said like did this person specifically. But are you a plus? Are you an alphabet person, Sophia?
No, but I
You're not.
had I was basically sort of manipulated into believing that I was, because I'm a tomboy, and
Oh,
I did go through some like sexual confusion, but that had more to do with my trauma. And
right.
immediately they latched on to me really quick and were like, "Well, you
Wow.
belong here, and that's what you are," and da 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 da
Mm.
da. And then when I didn't really agree with certain things, I became a turf. And as a biological woman, I was one of those people that was uh, ostracized, mocked, ridiculed, referred to as fish and stuff like that. So
Mm.
that goes on in the community, and we need to keep it real.
Yeah.
So you have at least been because I think Scott and I are both straight. Oh, I can
Mm.
definitely speak for myself. I'm not so sure about Scott, but
Scott, I
uh,
mean, he be dropping bombs on you like crazy.
I
I
know,
know it
right?
does.
And Scott just takes it.
I don't care. You think I
Scott
care
has
about him?
no. See, the thing is why Scott is low hanging fruit. I can go after him very easy. There's a lot of source material, and I don't have to worry.
Y'all act gay.
I don't have to worry. The thing is, I don't have to
Why do you
worry about.
gay?
I don't have to worry about Scott having any clever comebacks with me. So it's just like a one just throw attacking him. So
I'm just
anyway,
trying to keep your channel afloat, man. That's all. If I go in on you, it's over. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
oh, ouch! He's gonna shut me down. But anyway, but so we can only talk about this like from outsiders, and so to get your opinion and your experience is really great. But I do have to wrap this up because today is actually Monday here, so we're in the
What about
future.
the video?
Oh yeah. You know what,
Let's show
man?
that video real quick before we go,
Okay,
because that's a good one.
all right. Well, let's get to some closing thoughts right here, and I'm going to pull up this video. And if you have any last thoughts to people who are like maybe teetering on whether or not I am in a cult or not, like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that if there are signs of you not being able to think for yourself, or punishment if you disagree, then you should definitely try to reach out and seek help if you're in, the type of cult where you can actually like physically be harmed or something, reach out to somebody for sure.
Like how do you because one of the things I've heard about people who are in the cults is that okay, I found it, Scott. Um okay, so one of the things I've heard from people who are in the cults is that you're like isolated a lot from other members, so you're not really open to have discussions. They really don't want you to have discussions about stuff. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's like
you have to find an outside source. It takes a lot of plotting and scheming. It's kind of like trying to break out of prison. Well, I mean, once you in there, you in there. It's not like you could just walk out. It doesn't work that way. That's why a lot of people say, well, why did you stay in that? Like, why did you do that? You well, it's not that easy. You become completely isolated. You know, everybody that you once knew is cut off from you, and you really feel like you have nowhere to go, nowhere to turn to. So it's hard. It's really hard, and some people never make it out. So the
Mm.
best thing is you got to plot and scheme, and you got to somehow find an outside life source somehow, and you're just gonna have to risk some things, possibly your
Well,
life. But
And friends and family, yeah.
yeah.
right.
Isolation.
But by the way, the group that I was telling you about, the Love is One, I had to play a scene where I had to go rescue a guy who was like leaving the cult and he like fainted and he was all like disheveled. So I was a police officer. I had to go and call in for help. But this guy got so desperate about what was going on there, he kind of just walked out into like, nowhere. And I had to like rescue him. And then I took him to the hospital. And then
Hmm.
he was waking up from this thing. And like the director was telling him, when you're waking up from this sleep, you have to imagine that you're still there. You know what I mean? He was trying to tap into something like primal about him. And so I could see when he was I could see his eyes like actually twitching and stuff. So yeah, it airs
Mm.
next week, so that should be interesting. Yeah, Scott, the thing is though, Scott, if you're in the cult, like one of those hardcore cults, the big C cults, I might
Mm-hmm.
refer to atheism as a small C cult. Um, but if you're in one of those, it's kind of like, I'm not gonna say too late, but it's just kind of like you've already drank the Kool-Aid. So if you're like
Mm.
stuck in it, it would be pretty damn hard to like snap out of it, you know?
Oh, it is. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. You gotta understand how hard it was to leave JW's, man. That was one of the hardest things I ever did, because of that I had no family, no friends, because my whole family and friends were all JW's when I was up there in Virginia. My,
Hmm.
my fleshly family, they were overseas at the time in Germany, and so I was there alone, just me and my wife at the time, and we were JW's, and I was talking about leaving, and my wife at the time, she didn't want to leave. She didn't want me to leave the JW's, and thought, why do you want to do that? Like, what is your agenda? Like, everybody was just putting all this pressure on me, like shaming me for. Everybody was questioning my motives, man. It was really hard, and then everybody was warning me, when you leave JW's, you're gonna try to go out there and be part of the world, and do drugs, get drunk, sleep with a lot of women or whatever. And because, like Paul said, eat and drink and be merry, for
For
tomorrow
tomorrow we
you will
die.
die. And so they told me that, and a lot of people that left that I knew, they actually did all that stuff, and then they wound up realizing that it was superficial and it didn't lead to happiness. And then they felt so ashamed, so they were like, like the prodigal son, man. They went back to JW's with their tail between their legs, like, I'm sorry, I learned my lesson. It wasn't what I thought it was out there. See, we told you. And then it just
Wow.
reinforced it for them, where they will
Right.
never leave now, because they've already left once and found out. They effed around and found out by
F
leaving.
around and find out. Hey
Yep.
Scott, can you send me that one video because I only have the two videos. So can you send it to me
Oh,
on
sure.
Facebook? And by the way, I do want to say this because we mentioned that about the sex thing. Um, why that's used as like a weapon. I mean, you can say it's used as like a weapon, but one of the things that I have to say is that if you don't want people to get involved with cults, what you have to do is basically stop them from having sex. And like
Mm-hmm.
the Christian conservatives, they want to stop the young people from having sex, and of course they push these abstinence only programs, and we know those don't work. So I think there's only one real way to stop young people from having sex, and that's to get them married.
Yes.
Um, because once you get married,
All
Sophia,
bets
you
are
just
off.
got trolled. You got professionally trolled, Sophia.
Yeah, I'm about to say, like, what in the heck y'all talking about? Because that don't
Well,
work either.
you ain't
Have
married.
you
Yeah,
seen the freaking divorce rate nowadays because of a piece of paper? You think people are gonna automatically be not sinful? Like, don't get me started, man. The
right.
only thing
Well,
that works is you teach your kids, you keep it real with them, you tell them the
right.
type
Keep
of
it real.
dangers
Yeah,
that are out there,
yeah.
and you chaperone your children and be a damn parent. Excuse my
Right.
language.
No, the point being, you're obviously not married because Scott and I both been married. So the point was is that when you get married,
Whatever. Can
oh,
I give him? Can I give him the bird? Like,
wait,
Yeah,
um,
please.
actually,
I sent it to your messenger.
yeah, I got it. Thank you. This atheist, he called me an incel. Like we started debating. He's like, "Oh, you're
oh
just an
wow.
incel," and I'm like, "Hey, I'm married. How did you know that I was an incel? Like, did you read my like? How did you know that?" I'm like, "Are you spying on me or something?" Okay, never mind. That was my attempt at humor.
Yeah,
Well,
Um,
I gave you a.
yeah, that's just called a pity laugh. Scotty, I'll be right now. I'm gonna tee this up, but if you could just give me just a quick what's your thoughts on this as I tee this up, okay?
okay.
Where'd he go? Well, just go on, Scott. We can
Yeah,
go on without him.
we can go on without him. He's just Doctor Evil himself, looking like Mini Me. But yeah, man, I was in part of that damn cult, man, and marriage was pushed on young people, and it was easy because think about it. People at a young age, their hormones are raging. They want to have sex,
Yeah,
but it's against it's against God's law
can't
to
stop
commit
that, man.
fornication, and you've got to. So what people do is they want to get married real quick. So I got married right away. Like when I was living with this girl, my girlfriend at the time, and JWs. We joined them. They were like, we know y'all not married. Y'all living in sin. So you got to get married or else not have sex anymore, move out, and all these changes. And so that's how they get you, man. They and think about it. When you have
It does
families,
more harm than good.
yeah, well, you have all these kids. Now you're anchored. Now you've raised the kids in the church or in the Jehovah Witnesses. You just can't give it up. What about your kids? What about your family? What about all
Right.
these
Hmm.
networks you've created?
Emotional manipulation.
Yeah,
Now you're
absolutely.
obligated.
Okay,
Yep.
here we go. Okay, I got it. All right,
Okay, cool.
here we go.
What's happening out here?
Oh, it's a critical thinking game where we take
Can't
a look
hear it.
and you
Okay.
step on a line you want to play.
Well,
You want to watch the
Can't
game
hear it.
played?
we were watching from up there actually
Oh,
because
now I do.
we happened to see the sign from up in the School of Social Work, which is on the sixth floor, and some of our trans students saw the statement. There are only two genders.
Well, thanks for coming down to talk.
Uh, it was pretty activating and upsetting not knowing the context. We thought it was sort of a statement that was being made, but not a thought exercise necessarily.
Would you like to see how the game is played?
No.
No.
I think we
Is
understand
it something that should be a game, though?
An exercise? You want to use defund the police as one?
Well, just thinking about what it looks like.
Yeah.
What does it look like
To
to
the
see
whole
like
community.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white men with a sign that says there's only two genders? You could have been like the Westboro Baptist Church for all.
What is white? Why did you identify us on the basis of our race?
Well, are you the best people to be hosting that dialogue about?
No, but you.
Representative of that community.
Okay, but I asked you a question. Why did you identify me and these people on the basis of their race?
What it looks like, right? Kind of like the activating, triggering aspect of it all.
So you think that it's morally acceptable to identify people on the basis of their race?
It's not a moral question. It's a matter of like the fact
It's
that
just
those
about power and
identities
privilege.
exist.
Yeah, and identity and representation, right? So if you had a bunch of queer folks out here asking those kinds of questions, and there was
Well, how do you know we're not queer?
that's true. I don't know, but there's not sort of a representative, holistic, inclusive feeling, especially from up on high. We're looking down and we see this statement being made. We're curious about it. We're also just worried about the harm being done to passersby.
What is the harm?
So there are
What's
people
the
who
harm?
went home because of
Just 1 second. if you notice, he's just asking questions here, healthy questions to ask, because they're making a lot of assumptions. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it right there is just keeping assumptions to minimum. I'm going to write that down. Minimal assumptions, and try to figure out something totally. Don't assume that you know it. Okay. All right. So let's play this a little bit more, and then I want to show the end part, and then I do have to go.
So triggering an
we have some
activating.
students.
So I think
actively-
the end result is
You know you're on film, right?
that is totally fine.
Okay.
There are real people who are really hurt by the statements. I think
What were they hurt about?
That's the Gress line. He says, you're on film, right? She's saying-
because that's not how they identify, and so it seems like a really triggering statement to just say there are two genders if that's not been your experience. So it's very harmful and very hurtful, and there's human lives that were affected. So I think that's the message we're trying to send, is to maybe consider the questions that you're asking or posing before you begin your thought experiment.
Are you curious about like what we're bringing to you at all, or do you have?
I'm thinking about. I'm extremely curious, and I'm extremely respectful. I genuinely respect the fact that you came, as opposed to 7 or 8 of you giving me the middle finger and saying "fuck you" to me. So yeah. So if,
What do you gain from this? Like, what is your reason that you just want to cause trouble, or like why are you here?
so I'm fascinated. I do street epistemology, and I'm fascinated if the people.
So Scott, what are your thoughts right now so far as this is going on? Because I think you have to pause these intermediately. Scott, what is your reaction to what?
Well, the video started. We didn't see that part, but they were on the roof giving them the middle finger and telling them, F you, man, get out of here, F you, blah, blah, blah. We're going to disrupt you and blah, blah, blah. And now they're talking about how his language was harmful and hurtful.
Right.
Yet, don't you think it's a little harmful and hurtful when you tell people to F you from the rooftops? I mean, how hypocritical,
And by the way, God, the Christian proper response to that is go fornicate yourself. Or that's
what the F
should be.
stands for.
Yes, go fornicate yourself.
That's right.
Epistemology is from the Greek, basically how you know what you think. Okay, so street epistemology is taking it out of the university and bringing it into the street. So I'm very curious. Okay, a sidewalk or a.
This is like 20-year-old.
This isn't street epistemology. You're doing this on the.
Okay, if you don't like the word street, you can call it plaza epistemology, or whatever. But the idea.
So right there, this is an example of starting to shut down questions right here, right? Because
Semantics.
or being pedantic, you're not getting to the root cause of what he's talking about. And I think you think both sides can be guilty of that.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he did that in this.
But he didn't do it.
He didn't do that in this scenario. She focusing on something that don't even matter.
Yeah.
Right. And so I do want to end up with this small clip at the very end here. I want to jump to the end because I guess you just have to see this whole clip to really understand everything. But this
It's really good.
Yeah, Socratic method, exactly. Socratic method. Actually, I wrote this down for talking about cults, but I do want to get to this last 2-minute clip right here. So.
I'm asking you to have a different perspective to understand where we're coming from, because we're trying to.
I'll back this up a little bit.
I'm asking you to have a different perspective to understand where we're coming from, because we came down here to try and understand where you're coming from.
Did you?
I don't think that anyone.
Did you really though?
To decide if this is
Okay, but you have to please be honest with me. Is that really why you came down, to understand?
Oh yeah, yes,
Yeah.
We were very.
Okay, and what is your understanding of why I'm doing this?
Care about your needs. Care about how you're.
It's not impact.
What I'm sorry, what I haven't heard from you. What is it?
It's not. I just want to tell you, we don't care about your thought experiment. We care about The impact that it's having on.
Okay, so you didn't come down to understand why I'm doing this then.
We came down here to tell you like what you're doing is harming others.
Right. So you didn't come down to understand. That's why I asked you to please be honest.
I truly do want to understand why this even
Just
exists.
because we didn't want to know how your game works doesn't mean we weren't coming down here.
So what is it that you understand for why I'm doing this? If you said you came down to understand why am I doing this? No. But this is, you've made a claim. You've made a claim. Right. This is what?
Maybe you'll watch the video and have some.
What do you think the result of people
You know you're being recorded, right?
watching this video will going to be?
What's your intent? What is the impact it's having?
That's all we're
What
asking.
harm is being done?
Wow.
Yeah, that pretty much summed it up there perfectly at the end. But I do want to get into last thoughts right here because I'm I do have to have a meeting right now. But exactly. Okay, so last thoughts. Get into last thoughts.
Yeah. Like what this last question, how many people seeing the signs will understand what he's doing? Probably no one. That's why they need to go down there and actually have a conversation rather than sit on the roof and, fly the bird at them from the rooftops and scream all kinds of obscenities. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that hard to figure out. But that's the whole thing. Communication is key, and it's going to be the key for society to, progress, is to understand each other. And I mean, we have a right to disagree with each other,
Right.
We don't have to all.
And then what I want to say about progression is a lot of times things are artificially progressed forward and at such a speed, like warp speed, that where does that leave other people who also need to transition and need time to transition? But that's not considered. It's all about me, what we want right now, immediate self gratification. And that's the problem with progressiveness.
Look at Sophia, so smart. You've been hanging around me too long, man.
No, I just get passionate about it because I'm getting older and I'm like, where's this shit? Sorry, gonna leave me. And you got Instagram models that can make millions of dollars by being pretty. I'm old, ain't nobody trying to see me. What do I do with my life now? I fit nowhere.
And I
But
mean, look, and here's the other point though. How many people seeing his signs will understand what he's doing? So does that mean we don't have a right to speak our mind? Like, there's some people who believe there's only two genders. Like,
just
if you
ask.
do believe, just ask. Or if you don't want to ask, then leave it alone. Like, turn the channel off. Leave the scene. I mean,
right.
And people have a right to believe there's only two genders.
Right.
I think that's pretty scientific, if you ask me. But other people feel free to disagree.
I believe in 3, by the way, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's fine. It doesn't have to harm anyone. It's not a harmful thing, in my opinion. But if I find out somebody is harmed by my language, I mean, I think I should have the right to decide whether I want to change my speech or not. Usually I will because I'm a nice person. But if I didn't,
can I answer that one
right.
question?
Go for it.
Well, one of the ways is, for example, if your kid comes out as an adult and says they're trans, but you as a mother raised them as the name that you gave them, you only know them as the, male boy that you raised, the parent is going to need time to adjust to that. And a lot of times, a lot of trans activists will teach kids on YouTube even, I've seen it with my own eyes, to basically disown your parents if they don't get it. It's not worth it. Leave your parents, disown them, come to us. You're not giving parents time to really adjust to this because this is fairly new on the level that it's at, and people have to learn to adjust slowly. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. So I do want to get into the last thoughts here. And a couple of things that stood out to me was that the epistemology, I think what he was doing, this might be the number one way to avoid cultish thinking, which is just to ask why are some things, or why are we doing things in a certain way. So they just keep asking why. The Socratic method is why. So the other side of it is having respect for yourself. If you have respect for yourself, you're not going to listen to people shutting down what, or being gaslit, for asking a question that you want to know the answer to. You know, being treated like a child or an infant, that's, it's demeaning to you as a person. So don't let that don't let that happen. Stand up for yourself, and you are worthy of dignity and respect, and so on. The other part, two other things was to stay connected to people. Having people who are in your life who can keep you grounded and to show you proper love, um, to show you what you're deserving of. Because I think when I was talking about some of the stuff I experienced, uh, growing up poor, Latino, and machismo mentality, is that you give and get love that you think that's like you're deserving of, and so by knowing that what the other person deserves as well, the other person deserves to be treated with respect as well. So we have to be able to see the other person as someone as well. So these are just, small things we can do to help keep us grounded. Minimal assumptions. I also like that one as well. Because if you have an assumption, you think you know why someone is doing something, or you think you know the actual answer. Don't do that. Keep asking the questions until you really can understand that. And then, just last thing I do have to say is that I think either extremes, because Sophia, um, you were talking about, you know, the left wing being on the cultist side. Well, the reality is that either extreme is susceptible to this kind of thinking. When
Hmm.
you're in the middle, whenever you're listening and properly evaluating things from both sides, and you're not an ideologue, it's pretty hard to get radicalized all the way over to either direction. But whenever you're already going in that direction, you can get sucked into those extreme sides more easily. So that's the last thing I want to say. I do have some agenda I need to get done, so I have to, yeah, I have to go. So, but thank you very much for your time,
I just want to
Thanks for
thank
having
Sophia.
me.
Yeah, thank you for
Sophia.
coming through, Sophia. You dropped jewels on us, man, about the cult and how to recognize different things, and really good stuff, man. If somebody's, in a cult, they can look at these things and kind of figure it out. Are you doing these same sayings, or separating yourself from family in public, and
Hmm.
behaving in certain ways that really differentiate you from others? These are little signs, you can red flags.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do want to say one other thing too, is that you really helped me see a lot of stuff. The other thing you helped me to see is that I probably shouldn't be abusing Scott so much, because when you mentioned it, I didn't really understand how my words are being offensive and hurtful to Scott. So you've
You're
made
harming
me
me.
you've made me evaluate my life choices. I'm probably not going to change, but at least you've made me aware
Get
of it.
the
So
But I
thank
he's
tell
you
you
very
something
what,
much.
else. Anyway, I'm glad I could help, and thanks for having me. I apologize for my
Oh, you're
swearing,
good.
but you know what they say, people that swear are more honest. So
There you
I'm